Welcome to my comments. As I was going through your work, remember the question was saying, describe one of Mendel's hybridization experiments that account for the particulate theory of inheritance. As you are aware, the particulate theory considers genes to be particles which are inherited intact, separate, unchanging units from parents to offspring and from generation to generation. So the particulate theory considers the heritable units as discrete, separate, unchanging units which are transmitted from parents to offspring. And particulate inheritance is advocated for, it is put forward by Gregor Mendel, because when Mendel performed his hybridization experiments on the garden Pisum sativum, he discovered that inheritable units or heritable factors are transmissible. They are transmitted from parents to offspring, from one generation to another generation. For example, from the parental generation to the first filial generation as discrete, separate, unchanging units. And even when he self-fertilized the progeny or the hybrid offspring from the F1 generation, he realized that all the products of the second filial generation, all the F2 offspring, were retaining the traits from their parents and even the grandparents. And even some of the traits that had been masked or hidden in the first filial generation, those which had been hidden from parents to offspring in the first filial generation, Mendel realized that those recessive traits reappeared in the second filial generation. So this led Mendel to draw a conclusion that characters are transmitted from generation to generation, from parents to offspring, as separate, as discrete, unchanging units. And that is the particulate theory or particulate mechanism of inheritance. However, in contrast to that theory brought by Mendel, there had earlier been a belief. Earlier there had been a belief in the scientific community that those heritable factors are transmitted from parents to offspring in a blended manner, that there is some mixing of those units or heritable factors in the offspring, from parents to the offspring. For example, if we cross a red flowered plant with a white flowered plant, the intermediate color, which is pink, the intermediacy of red and white, which is pink, would be expected to be obtained. That is according to the blended or blending inheritance hypothesis. But now Mendel comes out and performs these experiments on the garden Pisum sativum and disputes that common belief, that popular belief during that time. And Mendel says that when you cross red-flowered pea plants with white-flowered pea plants, in the first filial generation, all the offspring, all the progeny from that cross, from that monohybrid cross, will be purple-flowered plants. However, if we select two offspring of the F1 generation and interbreed them, you cross them, in the second filial generation, the progeny will be in a 3-to-1 ratio, where 3/4 or 75% of the offspring are purple-flowered plants, and 1/4, a quarter, or 25% of the F2 progeny are white-flowered plants, meaning that the trait of white flower color, which had disappeared in the first filial generation, now reappears in the F2 generation. And the main reasons that this heritable unit that controls white flower color must have been present in the F1 generation, but it had been masked in the F1 generation. Its expression, the expression of that heritable factor for white flower, the expression of the gene for white flower had been dominated. It had been dominated by the gene for purple flower. But the main reason is that that gene for white flower is also present in F1 generation. It was also present. But because that gene, because the gene for purple is strong in terms of its expression, it is dominant, where that gene or allele for purple flower exists together with white flower, it's only purple which is expressed at the expense of white. So in a heterozygous condition, in a heterozygous plant, where both alleles, one for purple flower color and another for white flower color, where both alleles are present together at the same locus in homologous chromosomes, it will only be the dominant allele, which is the purple flower color allele, which will be expressed. And the other one for white flower color, the other allele for white flower color, will not be expressed. It will be masked. But the main reason is that does not mean it's non-expression, does not mean that it is not present. It is present in the genotype of the heterozygous organism, but it cannot be expressed. And now when it gets a chance of these alleles, the recessive alleles, appearing together in the same locus of homologous chromosomes, that is when it will be expressed. And the main reason is that is the reason why in the second filial generation, F2 generation, white flowered plants were obtained in 25% or 1/4 of the entire population of the progeny in that generation. So that means that confirms that the allele for white flower color is transmitted from parents to offspring and from one generation to another generation as a separate, as a discrete, unchanging unit, which confirms or which agrees with what we call the particulate theory of inheritance or particulate inheritance. Thank you very much.